And welcome once again to the Nightcap News, ladies and gems. It is so good to have you here tonight. Thank you for being patient with my scheduling changes. Um, we are obviously at a new night and time. It's now Sundays at 7 p.m. Today is Sunday. Oh boy, March 20th already. Boy, didn't that just fly by? And tonight's episode is a toast to the old Tobie. And yes, that is a Lord of the Rings reference for all of you. Hello, Peter. Hello, Schlante. And the 42. Hi, Katie. So thank you for being here. And we are going to jump right in. Now, from experience before, I'm not going to be able to read all of the comments live because my little notepad is going to be sitting right over you guys' live comments, at least for part of it. And I have so much I want to cover tonight because we are going to talk about hemp and its history in the United States, just a little bit, just some brief highlights of the history. What it can be used for, which parts are used for what. We're going to talk about hemp in the textile industry and in medicine. And this is just going to be part of what I hope is going to be an ongoing pivot for the show for a little while, maybe because it's spring and I like to do constructive stuff in the spring, but we're going to be talking about some new technologies and some new ways that make plans and ideas like the Green New Deal feasible in today's modern, highly technological world. I can see some comments coming in. I'm just going to try to move this over here. Maybe that'll work a little bit better. Fred, good evening. I'm so glad that you are here. You are not late at all. I was just barely done with the introduction. And John, thank you as always for being here. Woot! Yes, because the subject today is hemp. Let's begin a little bit with a brief history on a plant whose history should not and basically cannot actually be told well in brief. So hemp has been cultivated for at least 10,000 years. Hemp was used by the Mesopotamians to make cords, which they wove pottery from. Okay, hemp has been around forever, and we've used it for all kinds of stuff. In China, hemp has been continuously cultivated for more than 6,000 years, and by 150 BCE, it was already being used to make paper, in China at least. Let's see. In 1535, hemp was so valuable, 80% of all textiles, really, but clothing in particular, was made with hemp. And so in 1535, King Henry of England declared that a quarter of all farmers, 1/4 acre of all farmers' land had to be devoted to the growing of hemp. And then you see this later in the United States, very early on in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. It was mandated that farmers grow hemp. That was followed by Massachusetts, Connecticut, and the Chesapeake Bay colonies. They all kind of had their own version of this, but basically you were required, if you were a farmer, to portion a percentage of your land, a certain amount of acres, specifically for the growing of hemp. And why? Because we were using it in everything. Even by then, we were using it as medicine. In fact, it was one of the most commonly used medicines going all the way back. You can find tinctures with cannabinoids, cannabis tinctures in medicine going way, way, way back. And in China specifically, um, I think that's fairly well known that they were using it to great medicinal effect. It was a big part of their medicine, but also many, many cultures had run across independently some variation of a cannabis plant and its incredible many uses just in the medicinal department alone. It can also be used as a food. It can be you can make flour out of it, you can make oils out of it, you can make milk out of it. Actually, I didn't actually know that until I was reading up on it tonight. So milk can be made out of it. It's a superfood, as I understand it, although I'm not a medical doctor. A couple of things I'm going to say tonight, um, and so let's make it very clear. I don't have a degree in medicine or pharmacology, and I don't have a degree in financial advice, and that's going to come up later. Um, I have no great financial literacy. I am not myself rich. I'm in no position to be giving financial advice to anybody, but that's going to come up a little bit later. And so I just want to get that out of the way. I'll probably mention it again. Let's see here. Oh, so hemp is let's start with what hemp really, really does for the environment. This is part of what makes hemp so exciting in a forward economy, in a humanity first, a humanity forward economy that is taking sustainable farming practices into account. And that's kind of where we want to begin. What is it about hemp that makes it has made it in the past the cash crop to beat it? Well, there's a bunch of things. So the roots of the hemp plant actually dig pretty far down into the soil. They are they suck up heavy metals like cadmium, iron, and they're carbon captures for the soil. So they aerate all the way down. They're doing an amazing amount of carbon capture. Um, Hemp sequesters 15 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare. So that's a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. And one of the things, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure I'll mention it again later, but one of the things that just blew my mind is even after you turn hemp into hempcrete, it continues to sequester carbon. And it has a bunch of other really, really neat properties. This is all stuff I kind of knew even before I started the episode, but then I was like, oh, I don't think I have all my facts down. So I watched a bunch of stuff and read a bunch of things and took notes. And so I'm just going to take a little while. I'm going to take this hour to just geek out on the possibilities of hemp. We're not going to stop with hemp. We're going to talk about bamboo. We're going to talk about mycology. Probably neither of those in this particular episode, because I feel like each of those subjects gets to have their own special place in this world that we could be building, where we are not fighting the environment. We are working with our world to and with the technologies and the amazing innovations that we have created over these centuries to make life on earth sustainable and prosperous, because those things are not, it's not a one or the other. Okay, if we are not using industry to become prosperous, then we're not using it properly. Like, that's what industry is for, is prosperity, but also to provide a quality of living. So to do that, we need to, and we know we need to, this isn't new information, we need to move away from these very dirty processes that we have for making plastic, for making textiles, for dyeing textiles. That's a big thing. If you want to just give yourself a small nightmare on environmental disaster, look at textile dyeing and where most of your clothes are processed and actually dyed, and what the environmental regulations basically are not in those areas and the results of it. It's a disaster. It is a disaster. So look into that. It affects several countries. America, the United States essentially exports slavery. I'm I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh because that's not funny. And that's a very pointed and accurate, in fact, way to put it. We have exported um, forced labor, hard labor, and all of the dirtiness that goes along with industries that we support to third world countries, called it altruism. Oh, we're providing jobs for all these poor people. And that was a campaign that largely worked in the 80s. And we definitely have a more global mindset now. We have a more global education, and we know better now. So if you care about the principle of freedom and you believe that slavery in all of its forms is abhorrent and antithetical to the nature of humanity, and if you are of such a mind, our divine purpose, which I personally absolutely do, then then it becomes more than just an environmental necessity, but also a moral imperative for the health and safety of human beings. Those two things are completely entwined. We are like every other living being on this planet, which is to say that we are interconnected and interdependent with our ecology. And we don't act like that. We act like we have dominion over the earth, when what we should have, is stewardship over the earth. We behave more like conquerors of nature. And there, I'm going to give mankind a break here. Nature kicked our asses for thousands of years, completely unimpeded and almost at random. Took quite a bit of effort for us to rein her in on any level. Okay, but now we have done incredible damage in a very short amount of time. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have damaged uh, millions and millions and millions of acres of earth. We did have as much as 6.4 million acres of natural earth prior to the Industrial Revolution. We are down to, I believe it is, I think it went from 6.2 to 2.4. 2.4 is what we have left. And we have shown no signs of slowing down our destruction of those forests. In fact, if anything, every time this gets any real media attention, it's like the logging industry knows that time and wood is running out, and they actually speed up. They make the problem worse. Back to the happy stuff. There's a bunch that we can do to fix this. So old growth forest can be saved, and new growth forest can be allowed to become old if we can replace a lot of wood products very, very quickly using a sustainable method. And what do you know? There is this absolutely perfect plant. It has, according to the USDA, over 25,000 uses. Wowzers. I got to tell you, anytime somebody gives me a one size fits all, or a cure all, or talks about kind of anything in cure all terms, I'm instantly suspicious. Okay, like that just screams snake oil salesman. And the more you look into hemp, the more you can really see that there is a one size fits all solution for 40 to 60% of the United States economic and environmental issues. And that is the proper, respectful reintroduction of nationwide hemp cultivation. And I'm not just talking about a few industrial farms here and there. I am talking about regular farmers and people in their backyards cultivating, using just as easily as you grow a strawberry patch in your backyard today, growing hemp and then being able to actually process it and use it fairly easily. I'm talking about innovation to help us process hemp even more easily. And we have tools now that we couldn't have dreamed of in 1789, for example, when hemp was being used for absolutely everything under the sun. It is more durable, more breathable, more insular than cotton. It's also softer than cotton, or it can be. Um, Anybody who has just fallen in love with hemp as a textile uh, is right here with me, already singing this song. But for those who are just like, oh my gosh, she's geeking out over weed. Well, yes. Um, let's get a little bit to that. So, first, let's talk about exactly what parts of the plant hemp are actually useful and how they differ from what we call marijuana, pot, and weed. Okay. First of all, the idea that they are cousins is, and you'll hear that repeated a lot, it's kind of a misnomer. Some types of cannabinoids are better for industrial purposes, and other types of cannabinoids have more psychoactive effects. They're all cannabinoids, they're all related. Cannabinoids the cannabis plant in some form or another has grown naturally on every continent on the earth since the beginning of time. I believe there's even a small shrubbish cannabis plant in Antarctica. I think I read that somewhere. I could be wrong. I didn't fact check that claim tonight. So grain of salt. Okay. So the stalk is, when we're talking about industrial hemp, a lot of people are like, oh, yeah, that's what you use the stalk for. And yes, but it's cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the parts of the stalk. So the it's essentially a grass, okay, and it's hollow on the inside, but it's got a hard core, and that's called the hurd. Now, the hurd is what you use. You chop it up real fine and you mix it with lime, essentially a mixture of lime and water. And that's how you make hempcrete, is with that hard inner core. Now, it's the outer fibrous stuff that you make fabric with. So that part's called the shiv. And you can separate the part, the shiv from the hurd fairly easily, actually, like literally soak the sticks in, let them dry out, soak them in water for 2 weeks, and then they will just, the shiv will just peel right off, and so you're left with both that inner core, which is valuable for the making of, let's see, I wrote all these down. I'm probably going to be a little bit all over the place because I took these notes in no particular order. Just anytime I was like, oh, that's cool, which was a lot of the time, I wrote it down. Yeah, so yeah, it's very affordable. You put them in water for like 2 weeks, and then you strip them down. You're left with these two separate pieces: fiber that you can use to make textiles, and then the hurd that you can use to make all kinds of other stuff. Oh, I think I remember where those notes were now. Okay. I'm going to try one more time to find them. Let's see. Fiberboard, insulation, and acrylics. Yeah. So that's from the stock alone. The leaves, um, the leaves, I guess, even when you're talking about using hemp in an industrial format, the water leaves, which is the big fanny leaves there, they're often considered a trash product. Okay. They're not the part that most people are looking for. However, they can be used in the making of medicine. Absolutely, they can be used in the making of medicine. And then because hemp pulls moisture and carbon dioxide out of the air, it has traditionally been used, the leaves have traditionally been used as animal bedding. Now, if you are farming goats, for example, this is actually very important. Goats are not the only kind of livestock that have this issue, but goats are somewhat susceptible to lung issues. And if they're left out in the moisture and they cannot get dry, they get goat pneumonia and die just pretty quickly, and it's kind of sad. It's a lot sad. So one of the things that has traditionally the leaves have been used for is in making the mulch because they aerate the soil very well. There's a highly soil nutrient leaves there, and really nitrogenates the soil. And then also as animal bedding, and like you could lay it out as straw and stuff, and it's very soft. It makes very soft bedding for the animals, and it's not going to collect mold. An interesting thing about it also is that although it sucks in moisture, as soon as the moisture in the outer air dissipates, it also is very breathable. It actually lets that moisture go. So where many other types of material just will sit there, if they've got any moisture in them, they'll rot. And this is where hempcrete gets really cool. Um, the nature of cannabis is to let that moisture go. And so it doesn't break down and rot nearly as quickly. It's not going to have to be changed nearly as often. And that comes up because one of the amazing things that you can make with the fibrous part of hemp is insulation. You can build your walls with insulation. You've got the hempcrete bricks, which are just as cool can be. Let's talk about that for just a minute. Okay. Oh, I took so many notes. So you make the hempcrete itself, as I said, by chopping up the hurd, which is that inner hard part of the stalk, and you mix it with this lime mixture. I want to say, yeah, and water. And I don't know the parameters on that. I'm sure it's actually quite specific. Even still, it's a more environmentally friendly process than other types of concrete. Um, when people talk about being green, I think there is a public perception that we can ever get to zero waste, zero emissions. And that's in a lot of ways not very realistic. It doesn't account for the natural balance of destruction and recreation that our world is constantly going through, in which we are also subject to and a part of. But there are processes that are significantly friendlier to the environment and to ourselves than the processes we're currently using. And hemp is one of those great products that processes so easily and well that it does not require industrial poisons for any of it. None of it. The entire industry around hemp, whether it's being used as wood, whether it's being used as oh, varnish. So apparently you can make like wood deck varnish with hemp oil. Uh, but it's food grade. You can treat a cutting board with it. That's another thing I legit did not know until today. But you could take uh, hemp varnish and seal your cutting board with it, and it's food grade, so no issues. You're not putting poison on your cutting board, which I would not recommend. So that also will increase the lifespan of a wood cutting board. And I don't know about you, but I do prefer them. I do. I don't know if it's an aesthetic thing. I like wood cutting boards. Okay. Another cool thing about growing hemp for the purpose of hempcrete is how little space and time it takes. This is what makes industrial hemp maybe the most sustainable of all products. Not only can you and should you grow it in crop rotation, so between your other products, the year before you grow your wheat or your soy, um, and your wheat and your soy will be more bountiful because the year before you grew hemp in that spot and it aerated the soil and it just provides a ton of nitrogen. It's so good for your soil. And then your yield from your wheat crop or your corn crop or maybe your backyard vegetable garden crop is just that much better the following year. But you can grow enough hemp for hempcrete on about 3 acres over 5 to 6 months to make a 2,000 square foot house, which is incredible. When you think about the way we're doing, um, the way we're building, and we need to be building more environmentally friendly and energy efficient housing today, hempcrete's got it all. I mean, we're gonna do a whole great episode on the wonders of bamboo also, but hempcrete is by far and away one of the most promising, easy to cultivate, easy to process uh, products on earth. Really, it's amazing. Oh, and you'll hear me go on about this from time to time because it's just a pet peeve. One of my pet peeves is that somewhere along the way, efficiency took over aesthetics, and where we used to build incredibly beautiful houses and great chambers. Even our banks were beautiful. Where we used to use architecture, now we just build squares stacked on top of squares with the occasional weird postmodern architectural feature thrown in. And I don't think fantasy MMORPGs would be as popular as they are if people didn't long for the beauty of old architecture. And we stopped doing that because it was not sustainable. It was expensive and not sustainable. Not everybody can have mahogany furniture. There's not enough space on earth to grow that much mahogany. But hemp changes this. Hemp can create absolutely stunning architecture because it's flexible. It gives us curves right into the building, big sweeping curved walls. We can go back to architecture at really beautiful architecture at a fraction of the cost. And, if you wanted a Snow White hut built out of hemp and hempcrete, that is surprisingly easy and Ish inexpensive. Honestly, I know that some hemp products are legitimately more economical, more affordable than their other more popular counterparts. But some of them, and it really kind of depends on the product, are still more expensive. Now, as the industry expands and increases, which it will, uh, those costs, we can expect the cost of hemp and hemp processing and everything associated around it to start dropping way, way down. One of the things that hemp can be used for also is biofuel, and it does not do to the soil what, for example, corn would do to the soil. Uh, I think we tried a couple of different biofuels, and I remember reading at least one thing about each of them and thinking, in the long term, that's not going to work. It's a good bridge, but it's not going to work. Hemp is probably our answer globally to the biofuel issue. Also, it is good for the soil everywhere. So, in places that have been ravaged by environmental disasters, planting hemp fields is going to be among the very fastest ways to really address uh, the 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 deep soil issues, such as the heavy metal deposits and so on and so forth. Um, Another cool thing about hempcrete is it's just an incredibly impressive product. But in a typical house today, your drywall and your studs and your rock wall all can get moisture trapped in them, and they can crack and they can mold. Those of us who live in areas of the country where black mold is a legitimate problem, one of the problems is that moisture seeps in, often through just minuscule cracks where windows and doors are, but moisture actually gets into the walls, and over time it rots your walls. It's also probably growing mold in there. I mean, don't freak out, but if you live in even a remotely rainy area, at some point you've probably had mold growing in your walls. It may dry out during the summer if you live in a place that's like really hot and dry, but this is a definitely something that can and does happen. It happens to your insulation, uh, and hemp, again, because it has this property where it's very breathable. Neither the insulation nor the hempcrete bricks are given to mold at all. They just release the moisture. But because they do pull moisture out of the air, they are a constant temperature regulator and dehumidifier in your home. So it improves the quality of your in home breathing air, reduces your energy cost, and does not have the same level of decay issues that traditional wood and rock already actually do have. So that's super cool, meaning in many ways it is a superior building material. It has a I want to call it an R rating. Oh, it has so many interesting properties, but let's find out here. Do 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 do. It basically it's fire resistant. Um, 1 hour. It's got like a 1 hour R rating, which I'm going to say this badly probably, but it basically means that it could be touched by a flame, like a small, like say campfire level flame or something, for an hour before it would really start catching on fire and breaking down. That's a significant amount of time. So, you know, it's not that they can't burn down, but they aren't going to go up like a tinderbox either. It's essentially concrete. I want to get to some comments here real quick. Um, Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You guys are just, oh, you're so awesome. Propaganda is a potent poison. Yes, yes. You know, I almost named this episode Reefer Gladness, just to like poke at the uh, at the propaganda war, which was the death knell of the industrial hemp. And you know, the United States actually was up until so this it's a strange story what happened. Hemp was king until the cotton gin. Now the cotton gin made cotton easier to process than hemp was, and hemp was being processed largely by slave labor up until then. So a lot of the decline in the hemp industry in the United States really starts with the Civil War, and then the cotton gin changes the game. There was a guy who actually invented a machine, way too late, unfortunately, but he actually invented a machine eventually that would have done for hemp what the cotton gin did. However, DuPont and other industrial barons, shall we say, put just a lot of money and a lot of effort into making sure that they did not have to compete with hemp. And, you know, Reefer Madness was very much the linking of the hemp industry in many ways to, well, I mean, that was just a horrible, racist, misogynist, fear mongering. If you haven't seen that particular piece of American propaganda, please feel free to watch it. It's downright hysterical by today's standards. But what's sad about it really is that it worked. It worked incredibly well. The State Department considered it a complete success. And really, it was, because by the 1950s, only rebels without a cause, and even most of them aren't actually smoking pot. In many corners, it's of the United States, it's all but unheard of. Not everywhere, I'm just saying, many places. Let's see here. Okay, Fred Eater. So the law would appear to be stupid. It makes no sense based on what I'm learning tonight. Okay. So let me give you a little bit of modern history that'll put a couple of things in context. I went through the ancient history. Let's kick it up a notch. So let's see, on February 7th, 2014, President Obama signed a farm bill into law, and it included Section 7606, which defined industrial hemp for the first time. Now, it attempted to separate what industrial hemp is from what marijuana is, and I didn't get the exact wording of the section. I maybe should have, but it is clearly addressing the more CBD rich, THC or low or no hemp products, the products we typically, the variations we typically use for textiles. He authorized hemp research and pilot programs by universities and state departments of agriculture. Now, in 2018, December 20th, 2018, President Donald Trump signed the 2018 Farm Bill into law, and that legalized hemp and authorized the USDA as the federal regulator of hemp production. So we're basically looking at hemp production being legal for industrial purposes between in kind of there's a couple of increasing laws here, but between 2014 and 2018. And then in 2019, by October 31st, 2019, the US Department of Agriculture published an interim final rule in the Federal Register, fulfilling their statutory requirement to establish federal hemp production regulations. States and tribes may now submit plans to the USDA to regulate hemp under state or tribal law, or they can choose to allow farmers to apply directly to the USDA for a license to grow hemp as of October 31st, 2019. And in 2019, 148,780 acres of hemp were farmed in the United States. So the law did change to make a lot more room for industrial hemp. That's why many states, not just the ones that are known for, their radical hippieism, such as Colorado and Oregon, now have at least industrial hemp legal. Up to 46 states. 46 states have legalized the production and cultivation of industrial hemp. Industrial hemp is no longer on the Schedule 1 list. I think marijuana has also been taken off the Schedule 1 list, but since the law decided to separate them, I would have to look that up, and I definitely could be wrong. I don't remember reading that specifically. So yeah, the law is catching up. The law is trying to put into place, so there's some competing interests here. Money is always king. And companies such as R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris and so forth are very likely to many of them, I'm sure, are actually already, in fact, I know, are already growing marijuana, THC marijuana for their products. But many other companies are just waiting for it to become truly viable to make the switch. And so if the United States, I think, goes a step further and begins encouraging the farming of hemp, we are going to do our environment a whole lot of good, for one. Let's see here. What else did I want to get to? So much stuff. Okay. As we mentioned before, the seeds can be used for a couple of different things, actually. Food, hemp seed hearts, hemp seed oil, protein powder, flour, milk, granola, and it's commonly used in animal feed, actually. A lot of bird seed has hemp seeds in it. The seeds can also be used to make oil paints, varnishes, printing inks, fuel, and solvents. It's also used in body care products, and soaps, and shampoos, and lotions, and balms, and cosmetics. That's just the seeds. That was just the seeds. We've covered the leaves. We've talked about the stalks. That's the seeds. Of course, the flowers in the variations that are heavy in THC and have specific CBD properties, those can be used for their psychoactive effects or as medicine. Can use it to make fiberboard. And the roots, another part of the hemp plant that's overlooked by people who are growing, particularly, I think, pot farmers who are growing it for the psychoactive effect, is that the roots also have medicinal value in addition to really trying to dig down deep and aerate that soil like they do, they also can be used to make specific kinds of medicine, arthritis and joint pain medicine, fibromyalgia, eczema, and migraines. Uh, uh, are all medications that can be made just from the roots. So amazing. Am I right? Am I right? So we're at 7:45, and I want to just geek out and gush about one silly other thing tonight that's got nothing to do with nothing. Not really. But I'm a big Star Trek fan, as I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure I've mentioned before. And this week on Discovery, no particular spoils, but the lovely Miss Stacey Abrams made a cameo as the president of Earth. And so for me, that is two of my favorite geekdoms colliding in a wonderful way. And that just tickled me pink. And I thought she did a wonderful job. And sort of taking from what I'm going to call the Zelensky lesson. Excuse me. I just want to go on record saying I really hope that her busy political schedule, which I would like to see just get nothing but busier and more wonderful, also allows for her to make continuing cameos as the president of Earth on Star Trek, because I think that is just delightful, and maybe it would even help her amazing political career. And Star Trek, I think, is as good an influence on a society as any piece of fiction could possibly be. It asks the deep questions. It doesn't shy away from the hard answers. And it's had decades of sort of allegorical self-examination. And that is as true today as it was in 1966. So, huzzah, I'm just saying that was my favorite piece of news this week. Stacey Abrams was on Star Trek Discovery. And she wasn't in the whole thing, I'll be honest, she's got a cameo there at the end. But it was still an absolute delight for me to see. So, yay. What do I just reiterate? Unless something very big and verifiable winds up happening, I am not comfortable covering too much about the news from Ukraine. I do not have the ability to really separate everybody's propaganda, and I don't want to be part of parroting a narrative where I just don't know what I'm talking about, and I've got to take somebody else's word for it. I'm really good about talking about history. I am just not qualified to talk about Ukraine. So by and large, we are going to avoid that topic. And because it is spring, and because I think that our way out of all the despair and the frustration and the chaos and the violence that is the desperation, and the hardline foot stamping, is to start trying to build something, to really take a look at what our technology currently allows us to utilize and say, these old sidewalks are cracked and they're not working, and they're choking up the breathing earth. We know how to build much better, stronger, smoother paths now than we did actually in the 1980s. We've got better material for it too, and more sustainable material for it in addition. So if we focus on what we can do, each of us in our little corners of the universe, then, and we turn that attention to building what there is to be building and being excited about what is coming, then we will have the power to economically and environmentally weather, let's hope, whatever life has to throw at us next. Is it a guarantee? Of course not. There's no such thing. Um, but you can do things that strengthen your society for when bad things go down. And for us right now, hemp rope, hemp rope needs to be the tie that binds, and it can. That brings me to the other thing I was going to say. But how do I help? I live in a third-story apartment, and there's gravel and parking lots for as far as the eye can see. I'm in downtown Philadelphia, and 2 inches of square grass that isn't, that's mine, it's just not a thing. What do I do? How do I become a part of the hemp revolution? Well, there are so many ways. You might just even want to straight up Google, how do I become a part of the hemp revolution? Like, look at hemp, look at subjects surrounding hemp. One of the biggest problems that we're having with industrial farming today is monocropping. That's where you grow the same crop over and over and over again. A cornfield is a cornfield is a cornfield. It's always a cornfield. That's terrible for the soil. So using rotating crops and using hemp as a rotation crop, look into subjects around the hemp industry, get educated on the subject. And then one thing you can do, if you can't grow it yourself and you don't live in a place like I'm very lucky, I live in a place with dispensaries we have as many dispensaries in Eugene, Oregon as Provo and Salt Lake City have Mormon churches. I'll just put it that way. Probably more. We probably give the LDS a run for their money in terms of sheer number of outlets for which to purchase pot. But if you don't live in a place where you can just go to a dispensary and show your ID and walk out with your half ounce or your ounce of pot, as I am lucky enough to be able to do, you can still invest in the pot industry. Now, believe it or not, going to your local dispensary, if you do live in one of these places, is a way of investing in the pot industry. And that is of itself, the weed that you bring home to toke with your friends on the weekend, that is also helping industrial hemp. So, feel free. But if you can't do that, there are many ways to invest in the hemp industry. So again, I am not qualified to give financial advice of any kind, ever. Under any circumstances, should anybody be taking even a smidgen of financial advice from me. That being said, the hemp industry is expected to grow 18% by 2026. It is a booming, thriving industry with basically like all the benefits. This is all the sprinkles. It's all the cake and all the cherries and all the sprinkles. Okay. So there is even a cryptocurrency associated with the hemp industry. Again, I know nothing about that except that it does exist. So that might be one way to go. If you prefer more traditional investments, there are several companies that grow and make hemp specifically for hempcrete. You could invest in farms. You could invest in the hempcrete companies. You could invest in the people who make the fine wood grains, or, there's many, many ways to bolster that industry and make it a priority. The United States government is nowhere near getting around to having a real conversation about actually subsidizing hemp the way hemp should probably be subsidized. And the whole issue of subsidies is in the marketplace, and we can have a whole different conversation about free market capitalism, which doesn't exist, and capitalism, which and socialism and all of that. Okay. But that's a different tale to tell. I don't necessarily think that government should be subsidizing in industries. I think that the people should actively talk about what industries, what technologies we as a people want to subsidize. Like if we're engaged in our own technological and scientific advancement, then we have the power to build a fully sustainable Minas Tirith for all we care. Because we will have made, because we have, in fact, created the technology and the ability to do that in a way that is sustainable. Good for the earth, good for us. Anyway, we could sing about hemp all day, every day, but it is now 8 p.m. or almost 8 p.m. It's 4 minutes till. So I want to get to just a couple more comments because I did miss you guys tonight. I really want to do stuff that I enjoy, and I really enjoy from time to time geeking out on stuff like hempcrete. We're gonna geek out on other cool stuff. Mushrooms. We're gonna do a whole thing on why mushrooms are the answer to everything else that hempcrete didn't answer, and even there's quite a bit of overlap. So fantastic. There are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We are all crew. Peter Ducat, I believe, is who said that, or something like that. I almost picked that for tonight's quote, Peter. Thank you so much for putting that up there. That was almost tonight's quote. What I actually picked was, hemp is of first necessity to the wealth and protection of the country. Thomas Jefferson. He was correct. Now, Thomas Jefferson also was very early on made the wily observation that I believe something to the effect of the ink is barely dry on the U.S. Constitution, and already the corporations are threatening to rip her apart for their own self-interest. That was the gist of it, not a quote of it. Let's see here. If I made a campfire or something out of hemp plants, would it make people high? There are some strains that wouldn't at all. Not at all. There are other strains that did. In fact, in the glory days of the hemp industry, but back when it was built on slave labor, the waste parts of hemp used to be thrown in a big bonfire, and the day that those bonfires would get burned, the fire tenders, the black slaves, would stand around it and sometimes get a contact high, and they would sing hymns and stuff. And so it really depends on the strain. We weren't cultivating hemp with so much of that in mind at the time. So generally for industrial hemp today, no. The hemp that makes the really great industrial stuff just doesn't really have quite as much of the psychoactive properties anyway. Ooh, also, great point, Katie. Great point. Also had engineering company check to see if their tobacco equipment could be modified. So, yeah, actually, there was a guy named Stricken. I want to say it wasn't Strychnine. It might have been Oh, I know I've got his name wrong. I should have written that down. Anyway, he he actually built um he actually built a machine for that would have been the cotton gin of the hemp industry back in the day. And I I think one of the things that I find exciting about the hemp industry is that largely people who are cultivating it are still doing an old-fashioned hand process. They basically would be exactly how we might have treated it in the medieval times. We're not really using a ton of super tech in the hemp industry, but as a result that also leaves us very open to being able to invent and design some very cool ways to process and handle hemp, and thereby just expand the ever expanding usefulness of this wonderful plant. Something written in Russian and something else written in Russian, I think. I have no idea what language that is, but it does look like a Coptic language. Okay. Also, hemp makes superior flooring. Absolutely. There is not one part of your house that hemp isn't going to make a superior product for. Your ceiling, your flooring, your insulation, you're going to break, like banisters down your stairs. So you can have these lovely wood stairs made of hemp. And then also these beautiful, smooth, sort of earthenware walls, also made of hemp. There is no part of your house that you can't make from hemp. It's glorious. It's more durable than hardwood. It is cheaper than carpet. And okay, that was Ukrainian. Um, the language, although I don't know what was said. Do you feel like translating that at all? Anyway, no worries a bit. No worries a bit. So, thank you one and all for joining me tonight. It is so good to be back. I'll be honest, I just kind of burnt out last week and I just couldn't go any further. I hadn't gotten enough sleep during the week and I needed headspace break. So long live Ukraine. That's what was said there. Long live Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Victory to Ukraine for sure. So anyway, I will let you all go for a lovely Sunday night. I hope you have a safe, productive, and happy week. Hit Monday with a smile, y'all. Don't let Monday beat you. Hit Monday with a smile. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. And as always, of course, live long and prosper.